Yeah.
We sit 10 feet away in the car, cracking up like children hysterically as you see employee after employee walk over, look at them in confusion. Like, this wasn't here yesterday.
Welcome to War Stories, the cybersecurity podcast where we interview real penetration testers about real break-ins and epic hacks. Your host is Zach Davis, experienced physical and cybersecurity tester. In these short episodes, you'll experience the adrenaline rush and hear firsthand what it's like breaking into companies for a living. Enjoy the show.
You ready?
I guess so.
1, 2, 3. Welcome to another episode of War Stories, the coffee commercial that identifies as a podcast. You tried CyberCoffee yet, Matt?
So I actually got my first bag today. I'm pretty excited.
I know you're a coffee snob, so you'll have to let us know what you think.
Yeah, and I actually heard the whole backstory about where this came from and who's making it. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah. Well, today we got Matt Shirley, one of my best friends, one of my favorite people, former coworker, director of the OCO team at Fortalice. What's your actual title?
So yeah, I mean, things change so quickly. Just hit VP of Technical Services over
VP
there.
of Technical Services at Fortalice Solutions. Good stuff. Well, glad to have you here.
Awesome. Happy to be here, man.
For the audience, like I said, Matt's one of my longtime friends. We've talked a lot about the Protivity days. We worked together there. You also crossed paths with Matt and Ryan in the BTB days. And then I was working at Fortalice and was able to convince you to come work there. And you're still working there to this day.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's about that's the major landmarks there.
Those are the major highlights. So I know before we kind of we've been diving into the professional resume, but I think we're switching it up a little bit. And we talked about this a little bit ahead of time, but you know, you're a pen tester. I think you've moved more into like advisory stuff, was from what you were telling me now. But like, what was the thing that got you started, that got you excited? Like, kind of what would you say was the catalyst of your first, I guess, experiences that pushed you towards security?
Yeah, no, it's always a good question. So I think I hit one of those classic molds of, even as a kid, I just wanted to break everything.
Hacker mentality.
You know, yes, the hacker mentality, the chaos, the just, you know, why are we defined by these preset rules? So, you know, my early days were much more between, you know, how do things physically work? I was the kid taking apart the CD player, trying to understand why it makes the disc spin, how to fix it if it stops working. But also kind of like early days of AOL, going to websites, seeing, you know,
Instant Messenger,
the fun classic, you know, URL parameters like ID equals 1, and you're, you know, kind of doing early manual directory brute forcing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, well, what happens if I make that ID 3? You know, where does that take me? So kind of the very juvenile fun trying to break the rules from a very early set.
Yeah, you've impressed me with that. With when we were first both getting into car stuff, I remember like you saw my modified Subaru and you decided you were gonna start working on your Golf, and you just tore the whole thing apart immediately without like, just ordered all this stuff and tore it all apart and then kind of figured it out. I think your car was stuck in your driveway on jack stands for a couple weeks where you're trying to get the brakes off and stuff. So I think that kind of fits into the hacker mentality.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's anything that's out there can be broken and modified to do what you want it to do. I mean, you're going to void some warranties. You're going to have some days where it's stuck on the jack stands and you realize why you're not supposed to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that mindset's what got me here.
Cool. So what, I guess, are you working on today, or, you know, what's your current role at Fortalice, or what can you tell us about Fortalice?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I'll even touch a little bit on, you know, you mentioned Protivity. I know a lot of the people that have been on the podcast so far through Protivity, a lot of the fun war stories we've heard. I've, you know, been there with them through those, or was kind of...
we just had John Beck on, and you were one of his interns he mentioned.
Yep. Yeah. So John Beck, I think, was a big mentor for a lot of us. I'd also love to shout out to Mike Swibin. I mean, I learned a lot of what I learned today. Quite frankly, a lot of what I prioritize and consider my niche in security is what I learned from Mike Swibin. But, you know, did the Protivity days, did a lot of pen testing, did all that fun stuff. Moved over to BTB, and that's where I did a lot of, you know, more physical stuff with Matt Barnett. Had a lot of fun there.
You guys like took apart cars and...
Oh, yeah. No, doing some infotainment and vehicle systems, doing a lot of ATM stuff. You know, it was, we'll even touch on that in the stories. It was hard to pick one, but all leading to your question of what I'm doing now. So I've been at Fortalice Solutions for a couple years now, was leading the offensive team, initially moved there to get a little bit more into threat emulation and, full scale red teaming.
Same reason I went there.
Exactly. Yeah. You
wanted to
you
do
were the
like
one that
real
pulled me
red
in.
teams. Yeah. I had a really good, for those that don't know, that was my last consulting firm I worked at before I went out and started doing kind of my own stuff. But the group of people that you have over at Fortalice and the way they approach the red team and, actually differentiated between red teaming and pen testing, it was a great place. Learned a lot from the people there and the network of people they had working there and or kind of in that whole cloud, I guess, over in DC and Arlington was just fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, geographically diverse, but yeah, a lot of our group is over in that area. But so kind of segueing that into what I'm doing now, what I've realized is, being surrounded by so many smart people, being surrounded by people that have written all the tools you've brought up before in this podcast. I was never, the best on the threat emulation side or like the number one most sophisticated pen tester. I'm kind of like you. I'm not writing my own tools.
No.
I'm learning from everyone
Lead
else.
script kiddie is what I like to call it. I'm really good at being a script kiddie, but I'm not really a true hacker. I don't write the code or, do the research, but I've been successful off the backs of my smart friends and colleagues.
Exactly. And that's how I felt too. So really, I piggybacked on a lot of what Mike Swibin taught me, really understanding why are you doing this? How does this impact the business? It's awesome that, we threw a MSO 8067 because that's the first thing me and Mike were doing together when I was an intern, popping shells, having a great time, laughing maniacally, getting the heart rush, when you get that internal access. That's all fun, but I learned from him, why does this matter? How does it impact the business? What is the true tangible impact that's going to help a client mature their security landscape, get them safer, make it so if you do a pen test next year, like they're better than they were this year. And that's where I latched on.
Hacking's really fun, but I think it's easy to lose sight of like the adversarial relationship, which is important to be successful on a pen test. But at the end of the day, what are you really there to do? It's to fix the holes, not to find them. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would call that more my niche. So what I'm doing these days is more just making sure that all of our technical services really align to the business needs, that, we're really properly communicating how to get our points across to leadership. I do a lot of, virtual CISO work, trying to work and understand, well, how do we get your board buy-in? If we're lacking security culture in our environment, how do we make that point?
Sure.
If we're just lacking the understanding of what these issues are and why they are so impactful, or, maybe we just don't have the basic fundamentals and we don't know what the issues are, and that's the gap. And we have to find them, identify them, classify them, prioritize them, but really working to understand where my clients have their blind spots and help them fix it, as opposed to just, having the fun breaking it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of times the pen testing, like it's technically complicated, but at the end of the day, we get to kind of deliver a report and walk away. And that what you're describing is actually like the really hard part, is like, how do you take that technical finding and turn it into an actionable, like strategic item that is actually going to make the business more secure?
So you call it the hard part. I call it the fun part. That's where I've kind of gravitated. Nothing makes me happier than sitting down and, taking all of the fun work that all the smart people have done and say, okay, well, here's why it matters. And here's how we actually communicate that.
Sure. Cool. So if you're more focused on advisory these days, I know you have a very technical background, but what kind of tool or technique do you got for us today?
So this is a fun one. I kind of came up with two answers, if that's okay with you.
Definitely.
I feel like everyone's bent the rules here.
Yeah. It's my podcast. I can make the rules.
Awesome. I appreciate that. So I'm going to give you a fun answer that kind of fits the war stories and, what I've heard so far from the podcast. And then I'm going to give you my real answer.
Okay.
So the fun one would be RFID badge cloners. I'm going to give this example specifically because I know the ones I have built, you have used probably more than I have.
Yeah, I think I still have one of yours in my office at home. Need to give that back to you.
Yeah, one of these days.
Yeah. You need it. You know where to get it.
But I mean, I know you've talked about it before, so I'm not going to break it down too hard, but everyone knows the RFID badge cloners.
Yeah,
they're on the wall.
The thing that was cool, so we have talked about the RFID badge cloners in the past, but there was just a few clunky things about them. And the way that they were initially designed was there's an SD card that's actually capturing it. So if you have that thing sitting somewhere or you're using it, you have to go somewhere secure, break the thing open, pull the card out, stick it in your computer, do all those things. And I remember you came up with like the best solution I've ever seen for that process.
It was fun. I'm not going to say it's truly novel. I'm sure someone did it before me. I definitely got the idea, at least mostly from someone else that created similar things. But yeah, it's what I kind of pushed the envelope on that, at least in our group, we had a lot of fun playing with, was that we shoved some, little mini Raspberry Pi with wireless capabilities on, a standard, wall-mounted RFID badge code reader. But then we would have a separate little Raspberry Pi that we would keep with us. You'd go ahead, you'd slap that bad boy on the wall, you'd wait for someone to swipe it, and then it would actually read it and automatically clone it from the Raspberry Pi that you're holding in your hand. So I think on our most successful engagements, we had it down to, under 10 seconds, where we never got it to work so well, but you could theoretically be tailgating someone, I don't know, a couple paces behind them, and then swipe in using their badge.
Yeah, that's what I remember is because I actually used it on a couple engagements. So you'd connect to the network, and I think I was just doing it on my phone. I wasn't like cloning it as quickly as you were, but like you'd see there was a little web app you log into, and as somebody scanned a badge, like you could basically refresh the page and the number would be right there. And then I think you even had it at one point taken a step further where like you were holding the cloner in your hand, they would tap their badge, it would get sent over to the app, and then it would, like, you could hit a button and it would clone onto the card, and you could just go right behind them and basically walk right in afterwards. Same badge.
It was a rare day we had it work that well, but yeah, that was the intent. Sometimes it did it.
Yeah, very cool. Well, there's a lot of security tools that like work as a proof of concept. Like maybe not a good analogy, but you run a Nessus scan on an internal network, and it'll come back with thousands of critical vulnerabilities, and you start going and looking at them, and 99% of them, there's like this theoretical research that somebody did and got a proof of concept working, but in the real world, like, you're not going to be able to actually exploit that vulnerability without a ton of extra work to actually, like, make it work for that certain situation. So I just think that's a like instance of a security tool that you made much more efficient for actual like real world application. Maybe not a good analogy, but it sort of reminds me of the same thing.
No, it's great. And everyone's going to get the analogy too, because probably most pen testers start somewhere cutting their teeth on, understanding Nessus vulnerabilities and why a medium can become a critical and vice versa.
Yeah. And scaring somebody with a report full of red, and you're like, well, none of these are actually exploitable, even though they're like listed as critical. But yeah, anyway, so
I can transition that to my real answer.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's the real answer then?
All right, cool. And here's where I'm probably breaking the rules. It's not a tool. It's something that in my mind's always in your tool belt. It's always going to be in your arsenal, no matter what security problem you're facing. And hopefully I don't offend anyone by saying it, but just pure human stupidity.
Dude, I saw a guy walking around at DEF CON once that had a shirt that said there's no patch for human stupidity. And it's like so true. It's like so the one factor that's never going to go away that technology can't completely fix.
Yeah, and there's so many phrases for it, the error exists between keyboard and chair.
Yeah.
But we can put it a little bit more politely too. It's not always going to be pure stupidity. Sometimes it's just, prioritization. It is trying to understand what do we have funding for and how do we prioritize that. But unless you have the full understanding of the impact of security issues, sometimes you're just making really poorly informed decisions, and it just makes the hacker's job always easier. So I call it a tool because, whatever's hot that day, I'm constantly going to have to keep up with the coolest, newest tools and how they're working and who's maintaining them. But you can always just say, like, what would have made this person's life easier, and try that. There's a reason Spring 2024 bang is someone's password right now.
Yeah. It's like that whole idea, which was supposed to keep people more secure, which is rotate your password more often, like just had the literal exact opposite effect. What we're talking about is like the industry standard had always been like roll your password every 90 days. Well, then people just come up with bad passwords. And I think they finally started figuring out, well, no, if you just have a long secure password, but you don't change it like nearly as often, or if at all, you're probably in a better spot.
Probably. Yeah. I'd argue there's some caveats to that, but yes,
usually
the better one.
But yeah, it's harder to crack a long, complex password than one that's not as old.
Oh yeah.
but isn't as well or crafted, I guess. So cool. So do you got a story along that same vein then? I think you're probably gonna have to have a physical one after that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, we
intro.
probably do. All right, let's tie a bunch of things together. So let's talk about a physical I did with Matt Barnett. That's going to use a badge cloner.
Okay.
All right, cool. And you know what? This probably is one of my favorite stories anyway, so it's going to work. So place ourselves handful of years back. Me and Matt. I think the initial way we tried to get into this place was like through the back entrance of a restaurant that was attached.
Okay.
That was just fun. It didn't really get us anywhere. But then ultimately, you know, we go to this facility and we just say, you know what? Why not? We take this RFID badge cloner. We literally double side duct tape to the back of it. We stick it to a window. I mean, like a fully transparent window, a foot away from the actual RFID reader.
Yeah.
We sit 10 feet away in the car, cracking up like children hysterically as you see employee after employee walk over, look at them in confusion. Like, this wasn't here yesterday. Swipe both of them. You see their, you know, RFID card pop up on
Just
the
rolling
interface
through
we've
on
got.
your-
You know,
yeah.
it's like the fifth one we get in the 10 minutes. We're just cracking up as person after person does it. Oh my god, that's hilarious. I mean, if anyone were to have swiped it and turned around, like it's clearly duct taped to the window.
Yeah.
No wires, nothing.
So it's like once you go through the door, like the other end, like it's in like a lobby, and it's just
Exactly.
like stuck on. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
hilarious. Well, it's
So-
funny. Eric told a similar story, a couple where he got it too close to the other one, the actual one. So it's like they stopped like working, and he saw people like freaking out, and then he went and like pulled it off, and like by the time he came back in, like the security guard, some
Oh,
employee
no.
was telling the security guard like it was right here. I don't know where it went. Like he had just done it just in time to like just make this guy think he was going crazy. But anyway,
No, it's another. Luck is usually one of our most successful tools.
oh yeah, where what was it? Where opportunity meets preparation is success or something like that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
that works.
Yeah. Anyway,
Back to the story, you know, we get our initial way in. I think at that point we basically jimmy a door so it doesn't lock, and we come back later that night. So we find out later that night that there's a cleaning crew going through this building. Across the street's a parking garage. So we do what I consider like the most movie-esque, like James Bond thing I've ever seen on the job, which was, you know, Matt goes to the building itself, gets his way in to a door through using like air can upside down to trigger the motion alert on the
Yep.
inside.
yeah.
And then I've got these big stargazing binoculars, and I'm in a car on the roof of a parking garage watching the silhouettes of a cleaning crew go from room to room. And I mean, like, it looks like a video game sequence. And I'm like,
It's
okay,
like some
you're
Ocean's
clear.
11 thing from the movie. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
It really felt like it. And, you know, we're sitting there like, okay, now's your chance. Go, go, go. Go to the next room. Come to find that, you know, basically they clear out. We didn't even need to do that, I don't think. It was great that we did
It's
it.
more fun that way, though,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So, you know, I follow my way in. He leaves me the can of air at the door he went in so I can follow him in with it. We're going through this office building. We're collecting, you know, looking in desk drawers, and you find a notebook that's literally every password these people have ever had crossed out and the next one written there. You're
Oh,
flipping keyboards and they've
Yeah.
got passwords taped under them. Like, just having a truly good time. Like, no one knows what they're doing. They think they're safe because they put it in their unlocked desk drawer. And then I guess a security round starts happening. So we're literally like hearts beating, tuck into like a closed dark room, like laying on the ground, looking under the door gap, watching the feet cross back and forth. Like, I hope they leave. I hope they didn't see us.
Yeah.
You know, just like truly, you think you're having a great time, everything's good, and then all of a sudden, like, oh no, why are they here?
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny because when I learned how to do physicals, it was always much more like social engineering stuff, and it wasn't until I met Matt Barnett and started going on physicals with him that it was like full like spy mode, like hiding under stuff. I would always just like if they caught me, they caught me. I would give them the letter like, oh, you did your job, but he's like, no, it's not over till it's over. He's like hardcore about it.
Yeah, and I think you covered this in a previous podcast. That doesn't fly these days, but like, man, was it fun when we could do it.
Yeah, there's crazy dumb stuff we did 10 years ago, which I guess it's not that long ago, but like, I don't know if I ever told this story, but we did one where it was a bank, and it was actually the first physical I ever did. We had gone into a bank, pretended we were interested in a loan or something, gotten them to, somehow we had cloned a badge. We came back after the bank was closed at night. I don't know what we were thinking, and tried it on the back door. And of course, got in immediately, but it's the bank branch. They had enabled their alarm systems. So the second I scanned it and like walked in, the bank's alarms started going off, and I had to just sit there and wait for the cops to come.
Smart move.
And the point of contact was extremely upset or the woman, it was the branch manager for the bank. She was extremely upset because she had left. It was like 5:30. She had gone straight to the gym and was in the middle of working out and like got this call that she had to come in and look at our letter. She was furious because she recognized us from before, and like, thinking back on that, it's like, it seems like such a dumb idea. Like, why would you try and do that? But I don't know. It didn't matter back then, I guess. But
I think at least in the circle of people, we all know, and some of the people we've had on the podcast, we all have at least one of those stories where it's just like, why did I do that?
yeah, things can get out of hand quickly depending on how people react, I guess. There's other things that could have gone worse that don't. And usually the letter is like a pretty good way. Like once people realize they caught you, then they calm down. But sometimes it escalates.
It was a false sense of security. I know I have ran from security guards knowing that, like, worst case scenario, you're pulling that letter out and hoping.
Just full on running away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting kind of like the best part of the story.
Yeah,
I
I keep getting distracted.
I don't know. It's all fun distractions here. We're finally, we had a mission. We're having a great time, but there's like this hardened HR vault. That's our goal.
Okay.
So we found it. We finally found it. We're like on cloud 9. This is awesome. We go to get into it. We start trying to lockpick it. And we're like, oh my goodness, like this is a serious big time lock. I don't think this is happening. Like we made it this far. We've made it through all these trials and tribulations, and we're going to get stopped by a door. It's like a serious vault door. You can't jimmy from under it. There's no weird tolerances we can try and shim. And I don't know if it was him or me, and we just kind of turn around and we look, and there's a receptionist desk directly in front of this vault door. And I'm talking like, I don't know, like 70s style drawers that pull out with these little rinky-dink locks on them.
Yeah.
So we take the lockpick set that we're trying to use. We turn over. We pop this desk drawer open in like half a second. I don't even know.
Just like turn it.
Pretty much. Like probably raked it or just touched it in a weird way and it pops open.
Yeah.
It's got the keys for the vault right there.
Fantastic.
It's
So
awesome.
you got this huge vault, and then the keys are just in the desk drawer.
Yes.
When I used to do a lot of banks and credit unions, it was funny how often like the vault keys were written on a sticky note, like on the teller station, like right where everybody's like walking around, and it's like, hey, you got this 1,000-pound steel door vault, and then the combo is just written like right out in the public area.
Human stupidity, my friend.
Yeah, human stupidity, no patch. So you got the keys.
Yeah, so I'm sure you might even have it. You're welcome to show it, but we've got this like legendary goofy picture. We get into this HR
I think we
vault.
do have it. Matt will put it up if we do have it on
Nice.
the YouTube video.
I'm not already embarrassed, I promise. So, we get in this HR vault. It's like our goal. It's got a lot of records. It's got a lot of PII. It's got a lot of cool stuff. But to our extreme joy at that moment, we realized it's also where they have their like marketing and HR swag and I guess things they do for parties. And we find these gigantic, goofy sombreros. So the first thing we do is we put them on, we take a selfie, and I'm pretty sure we sent it to the client. I know we put it in the readout and like it was part of our demonstration.
You actually put it in the report?
Oh yeah. No,
Oh,
it,
man,
it
that's
was delivered
fantastic.
to the client. I think we might have actually texted it to them. I'm not sure.
I love working with clients like that where I've had a few where it'd be like, go sit in the CEO's desk and take a selfie. It's like they want it for whatever reason to like proof of concept, I guess, or to drive the point home. Prove the so what factor. That's a good way. I used to have an old manager that used to always say that. It's like, how are you going to prove the so what factor?
Yeah.
It's like, you got in here, but what does that even mean? You send a picture from the CEO's desk as a selfie, that will turn some heads.
Yeah.
Or I guess wearing sombreros.
Yeah, no one's going to forget that picture.
Yeah.
But we've all been there, Again, that kind of takes me back to some of what keeps me going in this field. It's really proving the points that need to be proven. It's one that you can break in. And it's one thing, you're keeping keys to the hardened area and an unhardened area. But you got to prove the points to the right people. You need to make it clear why these are issues. You need to help them drive forward the maturity, or else it's just a fun time, which, I'll never complain about, but I like making a difference as well.
Yeah, you got to add the value too, right? It's like we are really lucky. We've got cool jobs where you get to do cool things, but at the end of the day, you gotta help, make a difference, make things more secure.
That's the goal.
Cool. You got anything else for us, Matt?
No, I'm happy to talk about whatever you want here. It's been a pleasure being on here, following up some pretty big shoes. I know a lot of names that have come through here, and I think we've all come through some of these organizations together, learned a lot from each other. I appreciate what you're doing with the podcast too, because this is really how we keep the community moving, is giving each other our war stories, giving each other the motivation to continue. Security community is not one where, you're not going to run into the same names and the same people over and over again. And you don't have to be someone that creates the tools. Everyone's got their big names that they follow. You just need to continue moving forward, just the right mindset to each other.
100%. Yeah. It's a great community of people, and it's really cool with all of our friends and how we've all kind of grown up together and then spread out. Now we work at all these cool companies, and we can all still lean on each other and share tools with the common goal of making things more secure. How can people find Fortalice? Fortalicesolutions.com.
Fortalicesolutions.com.
And Shirley.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to, you can splash the logo on the website if you'd like on the podcast. We're always here.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks a lot, man.
Have a good one.
Yeah. Are those actually on the thing, or can you take those out?
No, they're definitely embedded now.
They're embedded now?